Every empire believes its money will last forever. Every emperor, every king, every president. They look at their treasury, at their balance sheets, at their reserves, and they see stability, permanence, control. They believe the system they built is different, smarter, more advanced, too sophisticated to fail. History tells a very different story, because every monetary system in history has eventually broken. Not slowly, not politely, but suddenly and violently. And right now, a signal is flashing that has appeared before every major collapse. Gold. Not headlines. Not politicians. Not central bank speeches. Gold. When gold quietly rises, markets barely notice. But when gold breaks historical barriers, levels that stood for decades, that's not optimism. That's fear. Gold doesn't celebrate prosperity. Gold reacts to its absence. And when gold surged past levels no one thought possible, it wasn't cheering its own strength. It was warning about the weakness of everything else. This isn't just a price chart. It's a message. A message that has echoed through time right before empires fell apart. Because gold doesn't move on hope. It moves on math. And math doesn't care about political promises, emergency programs, or reassuring press conferences. Math only responds to one thing: sustainability. Right now the math is breaking. Governments across the world are drowning in debt. Central banks are creating money faster than real wealth can ever be produced. Entire economies are being held together by confidence, not fundamentals. And confidence is fragile. What makes this moment different isn't just the price of gold. It's who is buying it. While the public is distracted by stocks, crypto cycles, and headlines, the largest financial institutions on earth are quietly doing the same thing they've always done before major resets. They're moving into gold. Silently. Aggressively. Without announcements. Because those at the top of the system always see the cracks first. And they know something most people don't want to accept yet. Monetary systems don't last forever. Currencies don't die of old age. They die of abuse. This has happened before. Repeatedly. Rome thought its coins were eternal. Spain believed its treasure fleets made it untouchable. Germany trusted that paper money could replace reality. Every time the story ended the same way. And every time, gold told the truth long before the collapse became obvious. What you're witnessing now is not random. It's not a bubble. It's not speculation. It's the early stage of a process that history knows all too well. In the next part, I'll show you the exact pattern every empire follows, and why humanity keeps repeating it, even when the warning signs are impossible to ignore. Because once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. And more importantly, you can decide what side of history you'll be on when it plays out again. There is a pattern that repeats so consistently across history, it almost feels scripted. Not similar. Not approximate. Identical. Different centuries. Different continents. Different technologies. Same ending. It always begins the same way. An empire rises. Productivity grows. Trade expands. Confidence builds. The currency becomes trusted, not just at home but far beyond its borders. People save in it. Soldiers fight for it. Merchants accept it without hesitation. Money becomes more than money. It becomes belief. And belief is powerful. As long as people believe, the system works. As long as people believe, numbers on paper feel like real wealth. As long as people believe, governments appear competent. But then comes the turning point. The empire grows too large to manage cheaply. Armies expand. Borders stretch. Conflicts multiply. Social programs grow. Promises pile up. The costs start rising faster than real economic output. At first, no one notices. A little more debt here. A temporary emergency there. A one-time solution that quietly becomes permanent. Politicians reassure the public. Central banks step in. The system adapts. And this is where the illusion becomes dangerous. Because instead of addressing the root problem, overspending beyond productive capacity, governments discover a shortcut. They dilute the currency. Not openly. Not honestly. But gradually. More money enters the system than real goods and services can justify. Prices begin to rise. Savings lose purchasing power. But it happens slowly enough that people adjust. They blame corporations. They blame supply chains. They blame external shocks. They rarely blame the money itself. This phase can last years. Sometimes decades. And this is why almost everyone misses it. Because collapse doesn't start with chaos. It starts with normalization. Higher prices become the new normal. Larger deficits become necessary. Money creation becomes policy. And each step feels manageable, until suddenly it isn't. Here's the crucial truth history teaches us. No empire collapses because people stop working. No system fails because citizens become lazy. They collapse because trust in the currency breaks. Once money stops functioning as a reliable store of value, everything built on top of it begins to crack. Trade slows. Contracts fail. Social cohesion weakens. And this is where gold quietly enters the story. Not as an investment, not as a trade, but as a mirror. Gold reflects confidence, or the lack of it. When faith in institutions is strong, gold is ignored. When faith begins to crack, gold starts to rise. When faith breaks, gold explodes. Not because gold changes, but because trust does. Every major collapse followed this exact sequence. And in every case, the people living through it believed they were witnessing a unique situation. Something unprecedented. Something history couldn't prepare them for. They were wrong. In the next part, we're going back to where this pattern became unmistakable for the first time, ancient Rome. Because Rome didn't just collapse militarily. It collapsed financially first. And the warning signs were written directly into its money. For centuries, Rome believed it had solved money. The Roman currency wasn't just accepted, it was trusted. Across Europe, across Africa, across the Middle East, Roman coins paid soldiers, built roads, financed trade, and stored wealth across generations. A Roman citizen didn't question the value of money in their hand. Why would they? It was real. It had weight. It had metal. Money wasn't a promise. It was value. And for a long time it worked. But empires are expensive. Legions had to be paid year after year. Borders had to be defended on multiple fronts. Infrastructure had to be maintained. Public loyalty had to be bought. As Rome expanded, its expenses grew faster than its productive economy. And eventually the numbers stopped working. Tax revenue couldn't keep up with military spending. Borrowing wasn't enough. Political pressure intensified. So Roman leaders did what every overstretched government eventually does. They changed the money. Not dramatically. Not all at once. Quietly. They reduced the amount of precious metal in each coin, while keeping the face value the same. To the untrained eye, nothing changed. The coin looked familiar. It felt familiar. But it wasn't the same. Over time, silver content dropped. Then dropped again. And again. What once held real value slowly turned into a symbol of value, backed by confidence instead of substance. And that confidence didn't disappear overnight. At first, people adjusted. Prices crept upward. Soldiers demanded higher wages. Merchants raised costs. Rome responded the only way it knew how. By minting more coins. More money chasing the same goods. More dilution to cover yesterday's dilution. This is where the spiral began. As trust weakened, inflation accelerated. As inflation accelerated, people stopped saving. As saving stopped, trade collapsed. Entire regions abandoned money altogether and returned to barter. Think about that. The most advanced empire on earth, reduced to trading goods because its currency no longer worked. This wasn't just an economic failure. It was social. When money stopped functioning, loyalty eroded. Soldiers lost faith in their pay. Citizens lost faith in the state. Local economies fractured. Rome didn't fall in a single dramatic moment. It hollowed out. But here's the detail history books often overlook. While silver was being diluted into worthlessness, gold quietly held its ground. Those who understood what was happening, those who exchanged debased coins for real metal, preserved their wealth. They didn't stop the collapse. They didn't save the empire. But they survived it. The warning was there, written directly into the money. Most people ignored it, because trusting the system felt safer than accepting reality. And this is the lesson Rome offers us. Monetary collapse doesn't begin with panic. It begins with policy. It begins with temporary solutions. It begins with leaders believing they can outsmart mathematics. In the next part, we'll fast forward more than 1,000 years, to an empire drowning not in scarcity but in abundance. Because Spain proved that even endless gold can destroy a nation if money is mistaken for wealth. And once again the signal was there. Most people just didn't know how to read it. History likes irony. Because sometimes empires don't collapse from lack of money, they collapse from having too much of it. 16th century Spain should have been unstoppable. Gold and silver flooded in from the New World. Ship after ship arrived loaded with treasure. No empire in history had ever controlled such vast monetary resources. By every surface-level metric, Spain had won. Endless wealth, military dominance, global influence. And yet, beneath the surface, the same pattern was unfolding. Instead of building productive industries, Spain spent. Wars. Palaces. Imports. Status. Why invest when gold keeps arriving? Money felt infinite. Discipline felt unnecessary. Prices began to rise. Local production weakened. Foreign goods replaced domestic ones. The economy hollowed out, quietly, invisibly. Spain didn't become wealthy. It became dependent. And when treasure shipments slowed, due to piracy, storms, or war, the illusion collapsed. Despite owning enormous quantities of gold, Spain defaulted on its debts again and again. 4 times in 50 years. Let that sink in. An empire drowning in precious metal, bankrupt. Because money is not wealth. And abundance without productivity is a trap. But again the signal was there. As gold poured in, it also poured out. Inflation accelerated. The currency destabilized. Those who held real assets outside the system survived. Those who trusted the empire's promises didn't. Now fast forward to the 20th century. Germany after the First World War. Crushed by reparations. Politically unstable. Desperate. The solution seemed obvious. Print money. At first it worked, just like it always does. The pressure eased. Debts were paid. Life continued. Then it accelerated. Prices doubled. Then doubled again. Then doubled in days instead of years. People carried stacks of cash just to buy bread. Salaries became meaningless before they were spent. Savings wiped out. But gold told a different story. As the currency collapsed, gold soared, not because it became more valuable but because the money around it was dying. Those who converted early survived. Those who trusted paper promises lost everything. The warning signs had been flashing long before the final collapse. But most people ignored them. Why? Because accepting reality would have meant accepting that the system itself was broken. And that's always the hardest truth to face. In the next part, we leave history behind and return to the present. Because the same behaviors, the same decisions, and the same mistakes are happening again. Only this time they're global. And the scale is unlike anything the world has ever seen. Now look around. Strip away the headlines. Ignore the speeches. Forget the reassurances. What do you actually see? Global debt at levels never seen in human history. Governments spending more than they collect year after year. Entire economies dependent on low interest rates just to function. This isn't sustainable. And deep down everyone knows it. The response to every crisis over the last 2 decades has been identical. Print more money. Lower rates. Inject liquidity. Banking stress. Economic slowdowns. Geopolitical conflicts. Same solution. Every time. Money created out of nothing, to fix problems created by money created out of nothing. The technology looks modern. The terminology sounds sophisticated. But the mechanism is ancient. This is monetary debasement, just digitized. And it works the same way it always has. New money enters the system first through financial markets. Assets rise. Stocks surge. Real estate explodes. Those who already own assets get richer. Everyone else falls behind. Wages lag. Savings lose value. Purchasing power erodes quietly. Inflation becomes a feature, not a bug. And governments call it manageable. But inflation is not just rising prices. It's a transfer of wealth. From savers to debtors. From the disciplined to the leveraged. From the public to the system. Every dollar printed makes every existing dollar worth less. It's a hidden tax and it's relentless. The pandemic showed this in real time. Trillions were created overnight. Markets were stabilized. Panic was avoided. But the money didn't disappear. It stayed. It flowed into assets. It distorted prices. Housing became unreachable. Living costs surged. Financial markets detached from reality. This wasn't accidental. This is how inflation always works. And now governments face even larger pressures. Aging populations. Unfunded pensions. Rising healthcare costs. Expensive wars. Fragile banking systems. The gap between promises and reality is widening. And there is only one tool left in the toolbox. More money creation. But here's the problem no central banker can escape. You cannot print productivity. You cannot print trust. And you cannot print your way out of mathematics. At some point, confidence breaks. And when it does, the shift is fast. In the next part, we're going to look at the most important clue that this moment is approaching. Not forecasts. Not opinions. But behavior. Because while governments speak calmly, central banks are acting very differently. And their actions tell a far more honest story. If you want to understand where a system is headed, don't listen to speeches. Watch behavior. Because words are cheap. Actions are not. Publicly everything is fine. Inflation is under control. The system is resilient. Confidence must be maintained. But behind the scenes, something very different is happening. Central banks, the very institutions that issue fiat money, have been buying gold at a pace never seen before. Not a little. Not occasionally. Aggressively. Consistently. Year after year. Over 1,000 tons annually. This isn't speculation. This isn't tradition. This is preparation. Central banks don't chase trends. They don't panic. They don't gamble. They hedge against failure. And gold is what you hedge with when you no longer fully trust the system you operate. Think about the contradiction. Fiat currencies are stable. Debt is manageable. If monetary policy is working, why convert reserves into an asset that yields nothing? Because yield doesn't matter when survival does. Gold has no counterparty risk. It doesn't depend on another government's promise. It can't be frozen, printed, or defaulted on. That matters more than returns when confidence starts to crack. Some countries learned this lesson the hard way. When access to global financial systems was cut off, reserves held in foreign currencies became unreachable overnight. But gold remained gold. It doesn't need permission. It doesn't need infrastructure. It doesn't need trust. It just exists. And this is why central banks are quietly repositioning, reducing exposure to paper promises, increasing exposure to physical reality. They can't say this publicly, because admitting doubt would accelerate the very crisis they're trying to manage. So instead they speak calm and act cautious. This divergence is critical, because historically, when institutions prepare while the public remains unaware, the window is already closing. The most dangerous phase of any collapse is the one where things still look normal. Banks are open. Cards work. Markets function. Until they don't. In the next part, we'll talk about why collapses don't unfold slowly, and why waiting for obvious signs is how most people miss their chance to prepare. Because when confidence breaks, it doesn't leak. It snaps. One of the greatest myths about financial collapse is that it happens slowly, that people will have time. Time to react. Time to move money. Time to prepare. History shows the opposite. Collapses don't unfold like a gentle slope. They unfold like a cliff. For years, pressure builds beneath the surface. Debt grows. Currencies weaken. Trust erodes quietly. Life continues. People adapt. They accept higher prices. They assume stability will return. Then, suddenly, the system reaches a breaking point. Banks close. Withdrawals are limited. Currencies collapse. And everything changes, fast. Look at recent history. In some countries, people went to bed with savings in the bank and woke up unable to access them. Currencies lost the majority of their value in months, sometimes weeks. There was no warning bell for the public. Because the warning came earlier. Through signals most people don't watch. Gold is one of those signals. It moves before panic. Before headlines. Before official announcements. That's why it matters. The idea that a crisis will politely announce itself is comforting, but false. By the time fear becomes obvious, preparation is no longer possible. This is why timing matters less than positioning. No one knows the exact year. No one knows the exact trigger. But many analysts are converging on the same window, the mid-2020s. Not because of prophecy. Because of math. Debt trajectories. Demographic pressure. Rising interest costs. Geopolitical strain. Everything is compounding at once. And compounding works both ways. Slow at first. Then all at once. The final phase of a monetary system is rarely dramatic at the beginning. It looks normal. Until it doesn't. In the final part, we'll bring everything together. What gold is really signaling. What choice this moment presents. And how individuals have survived every collapse in history, even when empires did not. Here's the part history rarely emphasizes. Monetary collapses don't happen to reckless people. They don't happen only to the uninformed. They don't happen as punishment. They happen to ordinary families. People who worked hard. People who saved responsibly. People who trusted institutions that promised stability. The Roman merchant who watched his savings lose meaning wasn't foolish. The German shopkeeper who lost everything to inflation wasn't careless. The families locked out of their bank accounts in recent decades weren't irresponsible. They were victims of systems that failed, quietly at first, then all at once. This is why the gold signal matters. Not because gold is magical. Not because it guarantees profit. But because it tells the truth when everything else is trying to maintain appearances. Gold doesn't predict dates. It doesn't announce disasters. It reflects confidence and its absence. When gold rises to historic extremes, it's not signaling optimism. It's signaling preparation. Preparation by those who understand that monetary systems expire. Every single one of them has. The question is never if. The question is how prepared individuals are when it happens. Because while empires fall, individuals can endure. Not by panic. Not by chasing trends. But by understanding history before it repeats. This moment, right now, feels familiar because it is. Debt expanding faster than reality. Money created faster than value. Confidence maintained through words instead of fundamentals. This is the late stage of a cycle. And late stages are deceptive. They feel stable right until they aren't. You don't prepare for a storm when the rain starts. You prepare when the air changes. That's what gold is telling us. Not that collapse is guaranteed tomorrow, but that the conditions for collapse are already in place. And the window to think calmly, rationally, and strategically doesn't stay open forever. This channel exists for one reason. To study what history actually teaches, not the comforting versions but the honest ones. Because archives don't lie, patterns don't lie, and mathematics never negotiates. If you want to understand money beyond headlines, if you want to see the signals before they become crises, if you want to learn how people have protected themselves when systems failed, welcome to Finance Archives. Subscribe, and stay ahead of history instead of being surprised by it. Because the most dangerous belief in finance has always been the same. This time is different. History has never agreed.